I have another book. This one was a pleasant surprise. I came upon it. I think I was searching online on my New York Public Library listing of Russell Banks books, and saw this one. I said, "What? American Spirits? What is this one?" I had not heard of this one. That's because it's new. It actually has just been published. It says 2023, but then in the copyright 2024 by the Russell Banks Literary Trust. So this is Mr. Banks died in last year, I believe, 2023, and this comes out after his death. So when we when we get something like this that's come out from the heirs of the literary trust or whatever, we might be a little bit suspicious as to the quality of what we're going to be getting. Is this things that were cast away, that were not considered good enough by the writer himself to publish, or what is the deal? Are these just scraps left over, and we're digging up the scraps to make a little extra dough? Well, I'm pleased to report that that's not what I feel after reading this book, because I thought it's made up of 3 stories that are connected. They are all centered. It's a little bit like Trailer Park, only instead of New Hampshire, this one is set right on the top of New York State by Lake Champlain, Essex County. It says, I don't even know if there's an Essex County, probably is somewhere, but I know that Russell Banks lived up there at least part of the time, summers, and because I've gone up there to see the monument for John Brown, that is in Lake Placid, I believe, and I'd read. I was inspired to do that from reading Russell Banks' Cloud Splitter. And so one year, I don't know if this must have been different years, but one year I went up there, and then another year I went to Harper's Ferry. So I visited both of these big places that were in the story of John Brown. But leaving all that aside, there's nothing about John Brown in this. This is about Upper New York State, and I really like that. I like that it was set in an area that I'm somewhat familiar with, because I too used to live up that way. I lived in Burlington, Vermont for a winter or so. So and right across the lake from Vermont is Lake Placid and all that stuff in New York State. So so there are 3 stories in this, as I said. The first one is called, what is the first one called? I don't often remember titles. Oh, Nowhere Man. And it quotes, he's a real nowhere man, living in this nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans for nobody. Yeah, that's pretty good singing. I can sing better than that if I try. But Nowhere Man is pretty interesting, and kind of has things that are in it that are very pertinent to now, in that what's gone on here is we have this man who is the main character, who has whose grandfather bought this acreage up there and these beautiful woods. And there's a lot of woods and all that stuff up there, and so he's bought this woods. And so the grandson is, of course, having a hard time making a living up there. So he and his sisters have sold off part of the land to, what's the guy's name? Zingerman? Zingerman, yeah, to Mr. Zingerman. And Mr. Zingerman, we're told, had been part of the IDF and had been, all this military stuff. And the character in the book, he sort of respects that stuff because he's MAGA, Make America Great Again. He's a supporter of Trump, and his wife is not, I don't think, but he is. So there's this whole thing of these people who are infected by this. Move this cat so it doesn't jump on my tripod here, a little standing tripod. So he sold this land to this guy, and said, "Oh, can I keep hunting on it?" "Okay, you can keep hunting on it. I'm just going to have it for a little hunting shack for myself and some people." The guy's from New York City, and as I said, he was in the IDF and so forth. So he ends up kind of building over the years this sort of really military kind of compound in there, and having all these people come up with a lot of guns, and he has a shooting range. So there's this target practice, guns going off, bombs going off, all this stuff going off that's disturbing the character in this book here, and his family. He has a son, and turns out the son is like 8 years old, and they're used to in hunting season taking the boy out and going out with his uncles and this guy's brothers and brother-in-law. So they go out hunting, and there's a scene where there's a lot of stuff about that sort of thing, that kind of country life, a little bit about hunting, how they're actually doing it, how they're hunting for these deer, how they have to stay upwind, and how they be very quiet, and how maybe the other uncles went to this other location and kind of made the deer go out to this other way, where our hero and his son are waiting for the deer to come back to their nesting place, where they can see that it's all been compressed and so forth. So they bag a deer and bring it back, and are stopped by this Zinnerman guy, because he'd said previously, "No, I don't want you to hunt on my land anymore." So he's restricting it. He's not allowing them on the land anymore, and this pisses off this guy in the story very, very much. And the story goes on from there, and it ends in a real dark tragedy that kind of parallels certain sort of settler incursions into areas, and heavily armed settlers moving into an area and restricting the natural flow of people that have used that area for many, many years for hunting and so forth. So I used it. I had it, the little parallel thing that was in my mind. I don't know if that was the intention of this other issue that I'm not going to just really talk about, because why bother? But so it made me think about that, and I thought, God, that's a really good story. So the first story, Nowhere Man, is really good and really intense and sad. The next story, and these are long stories. The Nowhere Man goes for 65 pages or whatever. So Homeschooling is the next, and this involves another couple who have moved into town. The town is called Sam Dent, after the guy who settled it many, many years ago. And that comes into the last story more. But this couple moves up there. He's just got out of school in social work, psychology or something, and he gets a job at the prison that's nearby. And they're told when they get a job in the prison, well, don't live right in town. Maybe you want to move 17 miles away. So he does that, and he and his wife buy this big, Victorian mansion that was like built by the people who had money when they had money up there. So there's two of these big Victorian mansions, with the tower on the one corner and all that kind of stuff. Big wooden frame houses that are horrible to maintain and even horrible or to heat, especially way up there where it can be very, very cold in the winter. So next door are two lesbians, they are told, two women who have four black children who they have adopted from Mexico. I mean from Texas. Well, Mexico, Texas. So they are all, adoptee kids. And one of the women of this two women couple, actually, it was her house, her family house. So she was actually a resident of Sam Dent. So one of the women actually had grown up in that town, so they've come back from Texas to her home turf with this other woman who, they say, we have talk about the town about what they're like, and one of them had a Christian school in Texas, so they're considered to be good Christian women, although, oddly, this sort of lesbian couple, which is, sort of rare for some of these outback areas. Rural or small town areas like Sam Dent in the book. So they try to get to know the people next door, and then the kids next door kind of come around when they kind of leave or because it'll run away to the next door neighbor, and this causes a series of things to go on after that, and questions of child protective services and so forth, and that ends in a very tragic situation at the end. Okay? The third story is called Kidnapped, and that involves a kidnapping of two grandparents. And these grandparents are raising their grandson, Stevie, oddly enough. So Stevie is their grandson actually was born in 1981, and he's gone off. So these grandparents are presumably boomer types, like 70 whatever. So their son had married this woman, Amy, and they are Dents actually, and so they are directly related to the Sam Dent of the past, who named the town after himself in this sort of narcissistic kind of way. Once again, it's a story that brings in the kind of trouble in these kind of rural communities. In this one, the boy, who was born in 1981, like his father, who went to Vietnam, or grandfather went to Vietnam, the boy's father goes to the one born in 1981, the grandson's father. This is getting confusing, I know. So we got this two grandparents, all right? And the grandparents have a son that the grandson that they're taking care of, Stevie. His parents, one of them, Amy, is a drug addict, and she's gone somewhere. So she's out of the picture. And the father was killed in Iraq after 9/11. He was the one born in 1981. So he was right the proper age to be like, oh, I got to go save America and all that from the terrorists. So that's what he has done, and got killed. So So these grandparents take on Stevie, and they think Stevie's kind of special. He seems the character of Stevie seems actually sort of autistic. They don't say that word at all, but he's very good with numbers, but he's socially very awkward. He doesn't have any friends. He likes to work with plants. He works in a nursery. The grandparents sell their big house, and they set up Stevie with a single wide trailer that he's living in and buy him a F210, which is some kind of a pickup truck, I guess. So he's, got a pretty nice little life. And what happens in that is he gets wrapped up with his mother. His mother comes back, and he meets his mother, or they find one another kind of on an online sort of way when he's 20 years old and she's like 39. So they get involved in something together, and that ends up in tragedy as well. So that is what Kidnapped is about. And it's all, these are three, well, all three of them are kind of crime stories in a way. The second one, not so much. The second one is just sort of a sad story of, things just misunderstood and gone wrong and whatever. We don't really know what was going on with that family in the second one, the adopted children and the 4 adopted children and the lesbian couple. So that one's remains sort of mysterious. But the last, the first and the last one are. The first and the last one are definitely sorts of crime stories. And another thing that about this is in 2 of the stories, a place, a natural feature of that area, this river, Ausable River, and Ausable, A-U-S-A-B-L-E. It's a river that is, ancient river that goes from out of the mountains and into the Lake Champlain, and from there into on into the I'm distracted by the cat, into Lake Champlain, and on into the St. Lawrence Seaway, and on into the ocean. So that place with high cliffs, and which is a place I've been to actually. I visited that one time, and so that place features as a in 2 of these stories very prominently. So actually, I think it might have been better to call the book Ausable Chasm or American Chasm, because it does have a fall and a chasm feature to it. And yeah, I lived up that way, and I guess I'm done talking about the book. I think it's a really good book, and I think you should read it if you want to read stories like it. Very well written. They just sort of slide into the eyes and through the brain and give you these images. A really nice part in the last one about the woods, where the narrator of that story talks about the woods up there, and how it used to be a forest, and the difference between a forest and the woods is that a forest has the overstory, the big trees that cover the above, so that the ground is more open. The little plants and all that, and different little types of trees aren't coming up. So when you walk through a woods, the difference between a forest and a woods in this description of this character is that a woods is just, a wooded area of various size of trees and whatever, but a forest is the old growth, and where you can just see tree to tree to tree and all these trees, and without all the ground cover of, whatever else is, you kind of have to hack yourself through. So So I thought that was very interesting and descriptive and kind of wonderful, really. So it clearly Russell Banks knew the woods up there and knew what it was all about. Up there, there's all this sort of cool stuff. Like I went up a couple of times to an old fort just below Canada that was on Lake Champlain there, Augusta, the New York side. So you kind of cross over from Vermont into the New York side and go out on this sort of, well, it was a sort of an isthmus, almost an island when the water was high through this little road. And then there was this old wooden fort. And we went out there and camped one time and took acid and ran around. This was like 40 years ago. And it was just really a cool place to go because it was abandoned. No one was around, and you could just go there. So I don't know what happened to that place, whether it's still there or still abandoned or roped off or whatever. But so American Spirits by Russell Banks, a surprise book. Maybe there'll be more. That would be wonderful. And I'll be reading them if there are. So thank you, Russell Banks.